not only in this community, but in many communities. My parents are Mexican. I was born here in the United States, right here in California, and yet I see the profiling that happens, even to someone like me. So I, along with other members of Congress, have co-signed a letter that called on President Obama to appoint qualified individuals to the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board. That board is an independent executive branch agency that assists our president and our other senior executive branch officials in ensuring that concerns with respect to privacy and civil liberties are upheld, are looked at. The Oversight Board will consider and examine the implementation of all laws, all regulations, and executive branch policies related to preventing terrorism. So we want to be able to prevent terrorism, but at what cost? Where is that break-even point? And this Oversight Board will work to ensure that as a nation, we really don't go overboard with respect to that. And we have to continue to set benchmarks, and we have to continue to move forward, and we have to continue to look at these things and to draw a line against disrespectful actions and dialogues, such as the current chairman of our Homeland Security Committee, Republican Peter King, and his Muslim hearings. Those hearings, and believe me, I have sat through them, those hearings have but one purpose: to humiliate and to offend the cultural integrity of the American Muslim community. Another word we would use in the United States is witch hunt. That's what it is. And I will tell you that here in Orange County, it is sad to say, but I am proud to say that I have been the only member of Congress to stand up for the American Muslim community. Because when one person's civil rights are gone after, all of our civil rights suffer. Thank you.
We did have one last speaker, Congresswoman Judy Chu, but she's been tied up at another event. If she does arrive a little bit late, we'll give her the floor to say a few words. We'd like to thank our media partners in Pakistan Link, Safiri Pakistan, PBTV, as well as Sabiha Kiblani from ISOC. And at this time, we're going to open up the floor for the purpose of this meeting, which is for questions. If there's a particular person on the panel that you'd like to address your question to, by all means do say so. If not, whoever feels qualified or prompted to answer your questions will do so. Can we see a raise of hands for any questions? I'll start from the front.
I'd like to take a moment to recognize Senator Allen in our audience today. Please stand up to recognize. I would also like to recognize the Mayor of Irvine, Suki Kang, great friend of our community. Back to Chris.
So we'll start in the front.
This question, my name is Samira, and this question is for our two law enforcement members. When you took the oath as law enforcement, did you swear to uphold the Constitution of not only the United States of America, but also the California Constitution? Okay, if that's the case, then there is a part in the Quran that is permissible for a husband to beat his wife. Does that mean that you would arrest the person for domestic violence if he did so?
the Muslim will say something about it. Domestic violence is a crime in Islam. It's not allowed in Islam at all.
But it says so in the Quran.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. There's no other way to transport butter.
Misinterpretation of the Quran says that you have to treat your wife with respect, with honor. وَعَشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. That's what the Quran says.
Sahih.
So there are different interpretations of the words that have been used, and we do not agree with that interpretation.
But it abrogates. The second thing
No,
says,
it's not
"Daraba yudribu." What does that
Let's
mean?
not go into the debate of abrogation and all those things. There are different ways of looking at things. So there are many ways of interpreting the Bible, many ways of interpreting other laws. Islam also has different opinion on this issue. But as far as violence is concerned, absolutely forbidden.
What does Uzra mean?
Sir, I think you need
So
to
it has to be said.
You're not authorized, you cannot do that.
One at a time,
But
please.
if I can, in answering your question, both Sheriff and I, Baca and I acknowledge that we do swear an oath to both constitutions, and a crime is a crime, and if that crime occurred in our jurisdictions, arrests would be made.
That on the 18th of April, we'll have a whole day conference on this subject, all right, on the subject of is Sharia and the U.S. Constitution. That will be at Loyola Marymount University, organized by the Shura Council of Southern California and the Fiqh Council of North America.
I'd just like to add, without speaking directly to that, there's a passage in the Bible that says, slaves obey your masters. You get it?
Yes.
And what I'm trying to explain is that, of course, nobody recognizes that as a legitimate way that our society works. And we have to keep things in context of, you know, the development of religious ideas over the years. And so, just as no one would expect support for beating a wife, and certainly I'm not going back to slavery.
We only have time for just a few more questions. Our schedule is running a little bit tight. We do have one written one here. I hear good speeches, but how do you explain the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2012 signed by President Obama? This goes to U.S. Attorney Barati or Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
What part of it?
How do you
Sitting on the
explain the
defense
National
committee,
Defense
what part of it? What part of the NDAA? The NDAA is a bill that we pass once a year. It has all the policies for all of our armed forces. We pass it in one day. We work on it all year. We debate it in one day in the committee, and we bring it to the House floor for a vote and debate in one day also. It carries in it how many generals we will have, how many soldiers we will have, how many ships we will build. It carries in it how much we will pay people, carries in it the mental programs for returning soldiers who have problems. It has everything that has to do, every policy, domestic violence, how we treat our soldiers who, you know, do domestic violence, etc. So how do we explain the NDAA? I mean, it's a vast product. What piece?
I think
What
there
piece?
was a comment about anyone can be detained at the authorization of the president in the NDA, and maybe that's what
Okay.
without any other reason, just because there is so much.
That is a, well, actually, this passage, and if anybody wants clarification on it, you can contact my office and we will get it for you. This was a big issue on the news during the time of the NDAA. But the NDAA does not change what current law currently is with respect to detaining, with respect to citizens who are detained, who are viewed as somebody going against our country or our interests. So the person who asked this question, if you'll contact my office here in Garden Grove, we can get you what the current law is what was said in the NDA, this was a political statement. It had nothing to do with what the real law is and what the current law is. Okay?
At this present time, I see Congresswoman Judy Chu has joined us. She is the first Chinese American on the U.S. Congress, so I invite her to come up and say a few words. Congresswoman.
Well, good afternoon. It's so wonderful to see all of you and to be with all of you at this town hall, which is so important at this particular time in history. You know, it's been 10 and a half years since 9/11 happened, and yet it seems like it was just yesterday. I'll never forget where I was on that day. I was in Sacramento ready to go to the Capitol when I turned on the television and saw the unthinkable, the two planes crashing into the World Trade Center. But I'll never forget that day for another reason, which are the ugly hate crimes that came along with it. And in fact, immediately afterwards, hate crimes against Muslims and Arab Americans shot up by more than 1,600%. And only 4 days later, a man named Mark Stroman waltzed into a convenience store in Texas and shot the man behind the register. He was just looking for Arab-looking persons in Texas and bragged, "I did what every American wanted to do." Those kinds of sentiments are unacceptable, and so when I was elected to Congress 2.5 years ago, I felt I had to do something about it. And in fact, last year I became chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific Caucus of Congress, and we've made it our priority to make sure that we fight against anti-Muslim bigotry. We are proud of the fact that we have 40 members strong, and if you combine the Congressional Asian Pacific Caucus with the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, we actually make up 40% of the Democratic members of the House of Representatives, which is a pretty important thing. And so, when Chairman Peter King, the lead Republican in the House Homeland Security Committee, called for hearings on extremism in the Muslim American community, I felt that it was so terrible. I mean, it's one thing to look for extremism in general, but to target a particular group is like saying that somebody's innocent until proven guilty. And so the Tri-Caucus, the Black Caucus, Hispanic Caucus, and the Asian Caucus joined together to stand up and condemn the Peter King hearings. And when Lowe's Home Improvement pulled their advertising from the reality show All American Muslim, we stood up and issued protest letters to Lowe's Home Improvement for falling into and caving into that kind of misguided thinking. And when the press revealed that the New York Police Department and the CIA collaborated on efforts to illegally spy on the Muslim community in the New York City area, eavesdropping on them, and even recording everything from where they prayed to which restaurants they ate in, I led an effort to demand an investigation into those proceedings so that they know that people are watching. And when Attorney General Eric Holder came before the House Judiciary Committee, I had to ask him about these terrible FBI counterterrorism training manuals that they had been using. In these manuals, they had statements like, Islam is a highly violent radical religion, and statements like the Arabic mind is swayed more by ideas than fact. So I said, why is it that the FBI is using these training manuals with offensive Muslim stereotypes And what are you doing about that? And you know what he said? He said, we are no longer using those manuals, and those persons that put those manuals into place are no longer with the department. So things are changing, but it is so important for all of us to work together and to make sure that we build stronger and larger coalitions of people who will speak up when racial and religious profiling happens. And if we do not stand up for one another, we will be isolated. But if we stand up together, we will be strong. And so Adnan Khan was so kind to ask me to talk about the 1882 Exclusion Act. This is something that happened to Chinese Americans in 1882. That is when they came to this country. There were laws passed against them by Congress, and these were laws that prevented Chinese Americans from being able to immigrate, from being able to become naturalized citizens, from being able to vote, and they and only they had to carry papers on them at all times, otherwise they would be deported, even if they were U.S. citizens. This occurred for 60 long years in this country, was not overturned until 1943. Even my own grandfather could not become a naturalized citizen because of it. And so I've introduced a bill to ask for an expression of regret by Congress against this terrible law. And I am very proud to say that it did pass the U.S. Senate unanimously with both Republican and Democrat. But we still have a ways to go. We still have the House, and we are looking for even more sponsors of this bill. We have built a great coalition of people who are coming together to help on this, and we hope that with everybody's help we can get that passed in the spring. Well, let me just say, I know what happens when we don't speak out. Over 60 years ago, Japanese Americans were taken to concentration camps all around this country. They were accused of being spies, and they lost everything that they had, their businesses, their homes, and their possessions. But in the end, not a single case of espionage was proven. And how could this happen? It's because they didn't have the voices to stand up and say, this is not right. So today, we must have those voices. We all must support one another, and we all must stand up to say, this is not right when there are cases of injustice. And I know that if we all join together, if we build stronger and stronger coalitions from our diverse backgrounds, that we will have a country where every resident can have access to the American dream, and where no one has to ever feel unsafe, unequal, or un-American because of their faith or ethnicity. So I look forward to working with you and making sure that that happens. And I want to present the Certificate of Congressional Recognition to you for having this great town hall, and so I present it to you for the Council of Pakistan American Affairs, and also Dr. Musamil Siddiqui. Thank you so much.
At this present time, Dr. Siddiqui will continue the dialogue, as he said, at the university. But I invite you all to join us at the prayer hall as the prayer is set to go, and we have 2 janazas which are waiting. So I ask you all, please, if you are non-Muslim, join us and observe. Otherwise, I request everybody to assemble at the namaz. Thank you.
Is it over? Yeah, it's over? What are the questions? That's it? Yeah.